Hi, how are you doing this evening or this afternoon or this morning, whenever you're listening to this? I want to talk to you about my favorite lesson, that Jesus will meet you where you are at. This is just such an incredible revelation that changed everything, of course, for me. I think I say that a lot. So where are you at? And do you feel you may have questions about actually laying hands on others and praying for healing, or even believing for healing for yourself? And you may feel like, well, I'm not mature enough in my faith, or I'm not mature enough in any way to do these kinds of things. And I want to help you with some of that tonight. One of the things you can do to help you is by visualizing, to activate your faith, to activate yourself. Practice imagining yourself. And Jesus is the perfect example for this. If you are using my How to Pray manual, I'm on page 48. But we're going to begin looking at how Jesus met each different individual as exactly where they were at. And so I want to begin with blind Bartimaeus in Mark 10, 46 through 52. Mark 10. Now they came to Jericho. As he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the road begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Then many warned him to be quiet, but he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. So Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. Then they called the blind man, saying to him, Be of good cheer, rise, he is calling you. And throwing aside his garment, he rose and came to Jesus. So Jesus answered and said to him, What do you want me to do for you? The blind man said to him, Rabboni, that I may receive my sight. Then Jesus said to him, Go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus on the road. This is such a beautiful story, and there's just so much. I mean, people tried to stop him. He was crying out loudly. He heard that Jesus, so he must have heard that Jesus was healing people, right? Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And they were telling him to be quiet, but it didn't stop him. He wanted it. He knew that if he met Jesus, that he would be made well, that he would receive his sight. And he threw his garments aside, which is a whole story there, because garments kind of identified you, and he was a beggar. So he threw it aside, but Jesus said, have him come to me. And he commanded him to be called. So he threw aside the garment and he found his way blind to Jesus. I'm sure people helped him. And then Jesus asked him, What do you want me to do for you? And he said, Rabboni, that I may receive my sight. And immediately Jesus said, Your faith has made you well. And he received his sight. That is an awesome story that Jesus met him, but he asked him, What do you want me to do for you? The next example on page 50, if you have the manual, is where Jesus cleanses the leper in Matthew 8, 2 through 4. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. The interesting part about the leper is that he knew God could heal, but he didn't know if Jesus was willing to heal him. How many of us are in that? We've heard that Jesus can heal, and we've seen people healed, or we've heard about people being healed, but we're not really sure as to whether or not he's willing to heal us. What I love about this story is that Jesus met him in such a beautiful way. I don't know if you know it, but lepers, it's a skin rotting disease. It's like from the inside out, and you lose your nose or extremities, anything on the outside, ears, nose, fingers, toes. And lepers were cast out of the society into a lepers colony. And that's where they had to live. And if they came close to anyone, they would have to shout out, unclean, unclean, so people wouldn't get too close to them, because apparently it was very infectious. So the leper fell down, he worshiped him and said, Lord, if you're willing. And the wonderful part of what Jesus did, there's no telling how long it'd been since the leper had even been touched. He no longer had his job. He no longer had his family. And what does Jesus do? He touches him. He met him maybe in even a greater need. The Son of God touched the leper. And then, of course, he said, I am willing, be cleansed. What a beautiful story. Jesus met the leper exactly where he was at, and maybe even gave him more than what he thought he needed, which was to be touched. That's a Chrisology there. I don't know, but that's what I feel. The other example I want to give you is in Matthew 8, 5 through 13. And this is where the centurion came to Jesus for his servant, who said he was like his own and that his servant was suffering. He comes to Jesus and tells him he's suffering tremendously. And Jesus gets up and says, I will come and heal him. Well, the centurion says immediately, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and he said to those who followed, assuredly I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that same hour. So a centurion is a Roman guard. Jerusalem was occupied. Israel was occupied by the Romans. And centurions may have been over like hundreds of people. So he had a revelation of authority because he was a man of authority. And he just said this, people bid my call. And I know that if you just say a word, he knew that Jesus had that kind of authority. That was the revelation that he had. But again, just like with the leper, Jesus does even more than that. Centurions were hated by the Israelites, by the Jews. They hated them. And there were certain rules that they couldn't touch them and do these kinds of things. So the centurion was like, you can't come. You can't come under my roof. He obviously was aware of all the rules and regulations. And how beautiful that Jesus, in front of all of the Jewish people that were following him, his disciples were Jews, right? And he says to all of them in front of the Roman centurion, assuredly, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. So Jesus met the centurion in even a more special way. He showed him in front of everyone, your faith is great. What a beautiful thing to do for him. And of course, his servant was healed. He was met. Jesus met the centurion exactly where he was at. Now, in another example is someone who was high up in the Jewish faith. And this is in Mark 5, 22 through 24, and then verses 35 through 42. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Charis by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter dies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. And this is where the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years comes to him. And after she touches him, she's healed. And Jesus speaks to him and says, daughter, your faith has made you well. While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not be afraid, only believe. And we all know that death and life comes by the power of the tongue, in the power of the tongue, right? So as Jesus heard that word, he said, do not be afraid, only believe. And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John. And then he came to the house. When he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly, when he came in, he said to them, why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when he put them all outside, he took the father and mother of the child and those who were with him and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kumi, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. And immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. So let's look at Jairus and where he was at. He was at the place where he begged Jesus, and he said, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her. But what would Jesus have done if Jairus had said, just say the word, and I know my daughter will be healed? What would Jesus have done? He would have just said the word. But he said, Jairus said, you come and lay your hand on my daughter, and I know she will be made well. And that is exactly what Jesus did, because he met Jairus where he was at. He didn't ridicule him or tell him, why can't you be like the Roman centurion and just say the word? He didn't give him a questionnaire to find out where he was in his faith. He met him exactly where he was. So beautiful. And as they traveled, Jesus never, of course, left his side. They were delayed with the woman. And then people from Jairus' house come to him and say, the daughter's dead. Don't bother the teacher. But Jesus said no. And this is for someone. Do not be afraid. Only believe. And then he took only those that were closest to him, I suppose, and only let the mother and father go into the room. But another interesting part was that when people died in Jesus' day, they would hire mourners. and they would wail for the family. So I can only imagine the fear that struck Jairus' heart when he heard the commotion. Jesus had already said, do not be afraid, only believe. And now Jesus tells them, why are you making this commotion? She is not dead, she is only sleeping. Now, to the Father, for us, sleeping is getting rest, and we're not dead. We don't think of being dead as sleeping. For God, since we're always going to live forever, sleeping is the same as death, right? So he kicks them all out. They make fun of him and ridicule him, and he kicks them out. And then he meets Jairus exactly where he was at, and his little daughter was healed. Now let's go to page 53, and it's in Mark 9:17 through 27. And this is after Jesus and the disciples come down from the Mount of Transfiguration. And when they come down, this is Peter, James, and John also that was with him on the Mount of Transfiguration. When he comes down, all of these people run to him, including the disciples that he had left, down below. And when he saw the crowd, he was like, what's going on? What is it you all are discussing? And then he said, then someone in the crowd in verse 17, Mark 9:17 through 27, then one of the crowd answered and said, Teacher, I brought you my son who has a mute spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not. He answered him and said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me. Then they brought him to him, and when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed, and he fell on the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked his father, how long has this been happening to him? And the father said, from childhood, and often he has thrown him both into fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus said to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, I believe, Lord, I believe. Help me, help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that all the people came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, Deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more. Then the spirit cried out, convulsed him greatly, and came out of him. And he became as one dead, so that many said, he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. So a lot of today, this sounds like epilepsy and maybe a grand mal seizure there at the end where he's falling on the ground and foaming and becoming rigid when he saw Jesus. And so this is something that really affects the five senses. It's out there, right? I mean, this is scary. It's scary. Epilepsy can be very scary for those who are around. And this is something the father's lived with, the son, he says, from childhood. And the interesting part of this is that he said, if you can heal him. So the leper knew that God could heal, but didn't know if Jesus was willing to heal. This father is not sure. He said, if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. And that's when Jesus responded to him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. And so the Father's honest. He says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And this is very interesting here. This is an example we can follow. We can have belief and unbelief at the same time. The Father says to Jesus, I believe, but then asks him, help me with my unbelief. And that's a very good example for us. Jesus meets him where he's at. And since he cried out for him to help him with his unbelief, you ask anything of God, he's going to give it to you. And Jesus did, because his son was healed. There's an interesting thing that I've learned at Bible College, and this is not in the Bible, but I want to share with you the possibilities of different types of unbelief that we can all have. The three that I'm going to talk about is that unbelief can come because of a lack of knowledge. We don't know anymore. We don't know any better. We don't know what Jesus can do. We think these are just Bible stories and that it's not real for today. Or we can have unbelief because of wrong teaching, being told that Jesus can't heal us now anymore, that it all died with the apostles. And then there's natural unbelief that happens because of our five senses. And this is what the Father and the disciples had. This was in your face, grand mal seizure, and very scary and very hard to believe while you're praying for that. And so the disciples asked Jesus when they got back to the house, Lord, why could we not cast because they had done this before. When he sent them out and when he sent the 70 out, they went out and they were back. Lord, even demons obey our voice. And so it's not like they hadn't done it before. But listen to what Jesus says in the same story that's written in Matthew 17:19 through 21. Where the disciples ask why they couldn't cast the demons out. Same story, same example. So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Now, when I was first in my faith, I thought when he said, this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting, I thought he was talking about the demon. But that's not what he's talking about at all. No demon is going to not come out when Jesus cast it out, it's coming out, right? Because he has all the authority and power. So and also now being an English teacher, the subject of the paragraph is unbelief. Because of your unbelief, it's the unbelief that can't be cast out except by this type of unbelief, except by prayer and fasting. So the subject there, and there's different versions of the Bible. The New International Version, the NIV version, even leaves that verse out. Completely leaves it out. So be careful about that. Matthew 17, verse 21, if you have the New International Version, verse 21 won't even be there. So there's some confusion about faith, because the New International Version will in Mark talk about your faith. It's your faith. And so, but this is belief, because we all have Jesus's faith. Ephesians 2:8, for by grace you are saved. It is by grace you are saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, lest anyone should boast. And then also in Acts 3, where Peter is saying that it is our faith in the name of Jesus, and even that is not of ourselves. So there's several examples where our faith is given to us by Jesus. We don't even have that on our own. So this is unbelief. And it's good to be honest with Jesus and ask him to help us with our unbelief. Jesus meets us all where we're at. Isn't that so beautiful? Each person, one that had belief and unbelief, he had unbelief. And then the leper who was just wanting to know if God was willing. The Roman centurion felt unworthy, but he knew that Jesus had authority. And then Jairus begged him and said, if you'll just come and lay your hand, I know that she will be made well and will live. Jesus will meet each of us where we're at. You don't have to be some super guru in faith. He will always meet you in your heart where you are at. Just ask him for help. The latest thing I've learned is that if I ask Jesus to help me, Jesus, help me. What is hindering me from receiving? What is hindering me in my understanding that's keeping me from this? And from this understanding, from this healing, from this particular thing. And always Jesus shows me. So I hope this has helped you. It's a little bit longer than normal, but wow, what a powerful lesson. Jesus will always meet you where you are at. God bless you. I'll see you next week.